Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching Focal Length, where we get you a briefing on topics from across the world. Indo-Pacific security is shifting as India and Japan sign new defense agreements, including the Joint Declaration on Security Cooperation. Japan is deepening ties with Turkey and Australia while balancing military modernization against China's opposition. Lessons from the Russia-Ukraine war are shaping counterstrike capabilities and naval priorities, and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea remains a crucial focus. Joining us now is Yoji Koda, Vice-Admiral retired of the Japanese Navy, former Commander-in-Chief of the Self-Defense Fleet, and Senior Fellow at the Asia Center, Harvard University, with extensive experience in maritime strategy, naval operations, and defense policy. Today, he will discuss Japan's defense modernization, Indo-Pacific security, strategic partnerships, counter-strike capabilities, and naval priorities. Thank you very much for joining us, Vice-Admiral Yoji Koda. My first question to you is, how do the recent India-Japan defense announcements and agreements, particularly the Joint Declaration Security Cooperation, practically change the security dynamic in the Indo-Pacific, according to you?
Yes, first, thank you very much for inviting me to this, the program.
Thank you for that.
To answer your question, the Japan and India, especially, the people's sentiment of two nations has been extremely good for the last 80 years, 90 years. But, in terms of the security of the region, because of the geographic separation, especially the ASEAN nations and the South China Sea, defense cooperation between India and Japan has not been so deep. But at least last 2 decades change of the security situation in the region. For example, the quick rise of China, or the nuclear development of the North Korea and revive of the Russia, that really changed the security environment in this region, and also instability of the Middle East. That also has another factor that we need to take into account. So it's natural for India and Japan to come closer. And especially in the Japanese side, due to the so-called pacifist constitution, Japan has been very reactive last 50, 60 years. But now, the change of the security environment in this region, that did not allow Japan to keep on that, the reactive policy. So Japan changed its policy at least last 15 years. And it's natural for Japan to, deepen the relationship with India. And India has especially from the Navy point of view, the Indian Ocean, India has the larger responsibility, and Japan has the responsibility in the Western Pacific, and free use of the sea, or security of the South China Sea, East China Sea, and so all the maritime traffic communication lines, sea lines of communication between Europe, Asia, this part, both India and Japan has been bearing the very large responsibility. So it's natural for Japan and India to come together. And one other thing is our deepening cooperation posture has been sending the very clear signal to the China, or reviving Russia or North Korea, that we will be responsible for the security in this region, especially the cooperation with the India and Japan, supported by, for example, inner side US-Japan alliances, or our relationship with Australia and several other ASEAN nations. That's my thought. Is it okay?
Yes, that's great. Thank you for sharing that insightful insight from your experience. And now Japan is expanding defense cooperation with Turkey and Australia as well. So what strategic value do these relationships, especially the Reciprocal Access Agreement with Australia, bring to Japan's security?
Yes, it's clear, that Japan started also deepening our relationship with Turkey, for example, and with Australia, perhaps since the 1990s, beginning of the 1990s. Japan and Australia started, making a great effort to enhance our, the cooperational posture. At first, let me talk about the Turkey. Turkey, is for Japan, is a kind of the point of entry for both Middle East and the Ukraine issues. Especially Japan is almost opposite side of this planet from the Middle East and the Ukraine area. So Japan wants to make some visible contribution to the area, but still too far. And also we have the three major threats in our region. So it makes Japanese position a little difficult. But the geographic location of the Turkey, and also, again, the Turkey is the country next to India, that whose the people's sentiment toward Japan is so good. So the Japan started making Turkey as the good point of entry to the Middle East issue and the Ukraine issues in recent years, and also Turkey. The President Erdogan is also showing his stronger leadership in both issues. So that would help Japan, to play a larger role in the future for the especially after the peace agreement would be reached in both the Israel, the Middle East, and the Turkey. Japan will have many more the roles to play. So Turkey, of course, we talk a lot with the EU and NATO, but at the same time, Turkey is of course the NATO member of NATO, but Turkey as a single nation will be very important for Japan, for the Japanese future strategy to the Europe and Middle East. And the Australia are a little different, by the constitutional restriction, Japan has been concluding the alliance agreement with the United States only. And Australia is very close, friendly nation, but not allied partner. But we want Australia to play with us or to operate with us as if Australia is the more like allied nation. And one of the ways to realize this, the requirement from Japan, and also Australia has the similar thoughts too. So is, the kind of the mutual defense access agreement. And that really, the break the ice, especially the legal ice. And that brings the two nations much closer and operate together. So now, Australia is becoming a kind of the semi-allied nation for Japan. And that will be also the very, the enhancing elements for the stability of the region, and also especially to the Indian Ocean and the Middle East. Of course, China may not be so happy, but our democratic nations has to show a clear posture and determination that we will cooperate to maintain our stability of the region and also our ultimate values, democracy and freedom. And that's why we have been deepening the relationship with Australia for last almost 3 decades. That's it. That's it, ma'am.
And sir, what specific lessons has Japan's defense establishment learned from the Russia-Ukraine war regarding military modernization and deterrence?
Oh, okay, good question. No, I hesitate to say, but Japan has been, especially the policy side, has been a little behind from the worldwide effort in terms of the depicting the lessons from the Ukraine war or Middle East. And Japan was a little behind, especially from the new domain type warfare like the space, cyber, AI, and the several other the new military operational domains. That the almost 3 years and a half long Ukraine war, that's the typical model of the modern warfare that applies almost all the new domain area. So we have been learning those new things from especially from the war in Ukraine itself, but especially through the EU or NATO nations, or sometimes Turkey, and also sometimes the United States. That so Japan needs to catch up in those areas, new military domain areas, which has been a little behind during the last 2 decades. So Japan needs a lot of effort, but it's a little sorry to say that Ukraine war, because many people are dying even today, but also the war in Ukraine provides very good lessons, military lessons, or operational lessons, or policy lessons for the national leaders of Japan, both in military and in the politics. So that's the Japanese latest status. Is this okay for you?
Yes, great. And lastly, as a former commander-in-chief, where do you see the most significant gaps in Japan's naval capabilities? You have mentioned some now, and what should be the top priorities, according to you, for a future-ready fleet?
Okay, that's one thing we need to discuss. We means Japanese Navy and Indian Navy needs to discuss very closely. That's not well discussed in the world. That's the environment change, especially the global warming. The global warming, what would be the operational area where the global warming has the worst effect? That's the sea. Sea temperature really changed, especially around Japan. This year, this summer, Japan, all over the Japan has been suffering more than 35 degrees centigrade, the days for 20 years, or in the southern part, almost 2 months. And this really changed the water temperature of the ocean. And especially from the Navy point of view. And this is also, I think, true in the Indian Ocean. The anti-submarine operations would fully depend on the sea temperature at sea. And, until I'd say, change of this century, the end of the 1990s or beginning of the years 2000, the accumulation of the anti-submarine warfare experience since the World War I, German U-boat, to the World War II, German U-boat and Japanese submarine. But we have a lot of the accumulated large, giant, mega database for the seawater temperatures for almost more than half a century. But now, maybe only, they say, 2 or 3 degrees change of the water temperature. That makes those very precious mega database nothing. We need to develop the new database to meet with the new seawater environment. Without this, our anti-submarine warfare effort in this area against Chinese submarine or Russian submarine, or in your part, Indian Ocean, there are several submarine operating countries, and perhaps maybe China too. Our ASW operation will be very difficult. And if that happens, what would be the global sea lines of communication? Would it be safe? Maybe not. So that's not well discussed, and especially for people in India, are little indifferent. But especially Indian Navy's people, Navy sailors, submarine hunters. That's we need to discuss. So this will be a very the good the bond that would bring two navies together. Of course, there are many other things, the cyber AI that I mentioned. Japan is learning. So that within next 10 years, Japan has to make the huge investment to the new domains, AI space and cyber and such and such. And we need to catch up. Both Indian Navy and Japanese Navy are pretty good navy, very good navies. But without that, and also the new effort to rebuild the maritime, the environment, the mega database that would support our operations at sea will be the key to maintain the safe sea lines of communication or the effective operations at sea. And that's my the lessons learned through my commander days and since then to today. Is it okay, ma'am?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Vice-Admiral Yoji Koda, for speaking to us on Focal Length. Thank you once again for taking the time to share your insights with us today. It was a pleasure having you on and hearing your expert perspective. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of The Focal Length. For more international news and updates, stay tuned on NewsX World.